Are we so back? Did we ever really leave? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Geek, where we cover all things from DC to Marvel to video games and everything in between. We try to have a little bit of everything for everybody. I'm Stella, and today we're going to be talking about the new Marvel movie, Thunderbolts, with a couple of spoilers tossed in, so keep that in mind when we're going forward. Like this if you don't want to see any spoilers and go in blind, and then come watch us after the movie. I want this review to come from a spot where, first and foremost, I am a fan of Marvel. I am a cosplayer. I love the Marvel movies. I've been watching them since high school, so I am relating to this hopefully as a fan, as you guys are fans as well. And we understand that not everybody is going to like or dislike the things that somebody else might like. None of the points I'm making are saying that you are wrong if you like something that I did not like, or if I like something that you didn't like. It's just an opinion. So with those ground rules set, let's jump into it. I was lucky enough to see the movie last night, right before its official release, because Marvel was nice enough to invite me to go see it, but I do want to keep it honest despite that. So this movie was not my favorite Marvel movie personally. It might not even be in my top 10 Marvel movies, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. I just have some things that I wish were done differently. I did generally enjoy this movie. And if you're coming into this review hoping that it would be a Debbie Downer review, or I just didn't like it, I'm gonna hate on it the whole time, that's not what this is gonna be. I try to see the good and the bad in everything, so I'll give you some pros and some cons of what I thought and my opinions on that, and that's pretty much it. What we knew going into this movie is that our central cast is anti-heroes, outcasts, these characters that have had harder lives or been put into general circumstances that made them not so great, or they're just kind of jerks, just kind of in general. But the bottom line is they mostly haven't had the best go of it. Ghost from the Ant-Man series now has a better grasp on her powers, but she still can't fully control it for less than over a minute. So while Ghost is on the team, she is kind of standoffish, and it kind of seems like she is a part of this roundup because her powers are convenient to them when needed. But I did find her relationship with Yelena, when they got to have it, very sweet. John Walker is sort of an emotional punching bag, for lack of a better term, because he doesn't have much of a leg to stand on against other super soldiers. So when we saw him in Falcon and Winter Soldier, he could kind of be on the same-ish page with Bucky, and then Sam was human with no superpowers, so he kind of had that superiority complex, but it was kind of built up on this I'm better than you because we both have the serum. Now he's in a group with other super soldiers or super soldier-esque beings, and he's kind of the lesser of all of them. There's something that his ego is fighting to try to compensate for, and you can kind of tell in some moments where they're just trying to they're kicking him while he's down. He's very, very, very down. And him and Alexei are kind of good foils for each other in this movie, because they're both washed up super soldiers who were going to try to protect their country, and they kind of got hung out to dry in some ways or another. John Walker kind of did it to himself, but you would think that they would have some sort of relatability with each other because of that, but they don't really. And he still has that confidence that he is better than everybody, even though he is so sorely lacking in this group of other super soldiers. So it's definitely interesting to see him in comparison. Bucky, to me, kind of feels like he was tossed into the congressman role without really knowing what to do with it. It was like they just needed a Thunderbolts person in the room where it happens when they're trying to get rid of Valentina. Which is fine if you need it for the situation, but you can tell obviously in the first scene with him that he is in way over his head. So he's not very good at the espionage stuff. He was a Winter Soldier, he was in there and out, he didn't have to play a role to be the Winter Soldier, he just was brainwashed. So it's he's fitting into this box they need, but he's not quite there yet. And it's really hard after seeing him start to thrive in Falcon and Winter Soldier. He was going to therapy. He had Sam and his family to fall back on, and kind of feel like he's finally falling into place after being, Bucky. He was the Winter Soldier, and he didn't have a place, and he didn't have a personality, and he didn't have a life. So now he's in Congress doing stuff that he obviously doesn't really know. I don't know, it just felt weird. But it's not that big of a deal, because I know when you get other directors and writers on these characters that it's going to sometimes 180 and just kind of change the directions. It's what happens when you have a lot of hands in different pots, essentially. Because I am a Loki fangirl first and foremost, I know what happens when you get different writers and directors dealing with them. But at the end of the day, with Bucky, I do think it is something that he wants to stop doing things as the Winter Soldier, but he wants to help people, so he wants to do it as Bucky. And you kind of can tell that when he has to get dragged into the Thunderbolt stuff, he's mad about having to Winter Soldier his way through stuff. Super valid, to be honest. Alexei is kind of unchanged from the last time we saw him in Black Widow. He's doing his best in a world that kind of abandoned him. He was, the Red Guardian of his country, and then he just wasn't anymore. And he doesn't know how to be a dad, and he doesn't remember like the things that dads need to do to take care of their children, because he doesn't see it the same way Yelena did, where Yelena was like, well, this was the one part of my life that always like. After all, it wasn't really a real family, even though Yelena sees her life back in Ohio as like a fundamental part of her life, because it was the closest she ever had to having a real normal life, and a family, and a sister, and all of that. And Alexei doesn't see how that affects her, because in his eyes, his daughters will always be better than he was because they're actively out in the field, and that's what matters to him. And personal anecdote, I ended up taking my father to this screening because he really likes Alexei. But I was talking to my father, and he was kind of talking about how it's worse to worry about your kids when they're away from you because you can't figure out how they're actually doing. And Alexei doesn't have that instinct to like care, even if he doesn't see her. It's like if she's not there, he's like, oh, she's fine, because he believes that she's fine because she's doing so well. And that confidence is what kind of ends up destroying their relationship for a little bit, because he doesn't check up on her after Natasha dies. And that's something that you would do easily if you were like a real family, but he doesn't see it in the way that Yelena does, and it's just a mess, and he doesn't know how to handle it because he doesn't have the skills to do that, and he doesn't have the instincts, and him seeing her as being so strong is detrimental to her mental health as well, because she won't ask for help, and he doesn't think she needs it because she's always been strong, because she's only, you know, because she's Yelena, and there's no reason his daughters aren't strong. One's an Avenger and the other one's doing so well, and he just doesn't see it, when all she wants is a support group. And she kind of realized that she didn't have that support group in Hawkeye. When Clint talks about how Natasha used to always talk about her, but she also hadn't seen her sister in a really long time. So then we get Yelena, who is helping us as the viewers walk through how grief and trauma and loss of fundamental childhood experiences manifest and affect mental health. She's doing badly. She has lost interest in things that have previously excited her. She stays home. She doesn't have anybody to rely on, and she won't reach out to them, Alexei included, fully isolating herself because the state of her mental health after losing her sister and not going through with killing Clint kind of just tanked it, which makes sense. And she wants something new, but Alexei kind of just plants the like, your sister was an Avenger and you should do something that would bring you that fulfillment, and you could rescue people and be a hero and that would give you fulfillment. But that's a very selfish piece of advice, because that's what would make him feel good and not necessarily what would make her feel good. And that's kind of where we start this movie. And so we have Bob, or Sentry, who is interesting. I think he is a good portrayal of the mental health issue that is the Void and Sentry that flip-flops back and forth that has been in the comics. But in a year where a Superman movie is coming out, it's going to be very hard to sell it to people who like Superman that Sentry is also the MCU Superman. But that's only because we didn't get a whole lot of him being Sentry, and when he was just kind of a jerk. So it was very Homelander-y. But we get a lot of Bob and we get a lot of the Void, and that's cool. It's very neat to see him kind of settle and fight with the mental illness thing. Again, this is a mental health-centric movie. I'm not upset about that. I do enjoy it a lot. But I worry for the reviews and the public opinion of like, this is just a bad Superman. This is just a bad version of Homelander, which is not what Sentry is. And if you want to see a video about Sentry, we have one on the channel that I've done already. And like I said, Bob is a lot like he was in the comics. He was a drug addict, and he took the super soldier serum and it accidentally worked out, and he didn't know, what to do with it, because he was not that kind of person who would, become a superhero. The interesting thing about Bob is that he always used to stand up to his abusive father, and he was lost in the fact that his father would say, "You're not a hero. What are you trying to do standing up to me? You're never going to be good enough to do that." And then he suddenly handed the keys to help all these people who are like his mom. And he's like, well, I was always told that I'm not a hero. I'm not able to do that. So I'm not going to do that, which is very fair and valid and a very normal experience for people, even without just being handed a superhero serum. So it's not a bad thing that he's like this at all. It's very, very, very relatable to be like, there's this thing you want to do, somebody in your life told you you couldn't do it, and that's the thing that is holding you back, and it's really, really, really heavy on your shoulders. That makes sense. It's just that his insecurities end up literally manifesting into this super villain Void. And I personally really enjoyed it. I like Sentry as a character, so it was really cool to see this. In this movie, we get a lot of interesting stuff. We get people giving bad mental health advice, which is normal if you go and ask somebody who has not been to therapy, who hasn't been trained in a way to give good mental health advice. You get something something like, you could go save people, that'd be okay. If you push down all the bad feelings, it's fine, you know. And that's bad advice, and that has consequences when you give bad advice like that, and people are coming to face those bad consequences that they didn't really think about, and they were just kind of, this is, you know, this is what I would do. It's fine. But one of the most glaring issues I have with this movie is that it would have thrived as a Disney Plus series because there just wasn't time to build the character connections. If you had episodes of them, you know, you had a whole road trip episode because we love a good filler episode here, and you had them talking and they were sharing stories and blah, 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 blah. Even if they weren't like personal ones, at least you'd be like, oh yeah, there was a part where like Bob got kind of uncomfortable when we brought up, you know, mothers. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe we could figure out the endless rooms of trauma, you know, or we could have full episodes where it was just going through that labyrinth with like a couple of characters. We get like 3 characters and then the other 2, and then we get the final, you know. It would have been cool to sit in this, especially with how they're going with this movie. But you also have a lot of really headstrong characters that have been established as being jerks, or they're just really stubborn, or they're really overconfident, or blah, 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 blah. That's not, like, an hour and some is not enough time for them not to just seem like they're always butting heads, and by the end of it, you're like, well, are they friends? Do they care? You guys talked maybe like 4 times in like a genuine way that wasn't just bickering with each other. So it feels kind of like when you like trauma bond in a workplace, so you're not really like friends with your coworkers, but you all went through a shared trauma, like just a stressful situation. So you're like close, but you're not close. Because I feel like at the end of everything, that if what happened at the end of the movie didn't happen the way it did, those people would have just left and they just wouldn't see each other again, besides like Yelena and Alexei, you know? Like, it's just one of those situations where I was like, well, this would have been really good as a Disney Plus series, especially because most of the kind of bonding they were doing was on that road trip we didn't see, except for the last few minutes that they were making fun of John Walker. And that's still not like bonding. And then we get like Alexei and Bucky where they're actually kind of genuinely bonding, but they're still awkward. They're like in the like, how's the weather phase of superhero small talk. I do think one of the saving graces for relationship building in this movie is how compassionate Yelena is, and how empathetic, and how much she loves people and outcasts and people who need to be taken care of. It's been an established part of her character since she literally was introduced in the MCU. She wanted to take care of the widow. She put Kate Bishop on a wire in Hawkeye so she didn't get hurt. She adopted her dog, and she took the hamster out of the laboratory. Like, she's always cared deeply, and she's the one that keeps trying to make these connections with people and be a leader. She makes sure that Bob's okay within seconds of meeting him, and then just through the, you know, rest of the movie, that's her like guy. She's like, I got him, this is fine. Yelena really is like the heart of the Thunderbolts team. And eventually the Thunderbolts do reflect that same need to protect people, to rescue people. They end up, you know, doing the Avenger thing. They save all the people in New York, as many as they can, because they're the people who are there. The stakes were really only in the pre-established relationships with like John and Bucky and Alexei and Yelena, like, ugh. To the point where the Thunderbolts wouldn't have followed her into the void if she hadn't been so compassionate in the first place. They only go because they realize that she went in because she thinks there's something to be had there. None of them come to that conclusion, which is what you need in a superhero team, is that people just like can throw themselves into the action, which they did, but when something like mattered to try to figure out the solution, they were just gonna run off. And the worst thing is, I'm a sucker for found family. I love the TVA family, I love the Coven family, it's just we didn't have the time for a found family. So like, the Avengers also are found family. They had so many movies at that time, which eventually, but they also did really good at setting them up in that first movie because they had to, because it was the first Avenger movie. And finally, this is a big spoiler. If you don't want to know anything, just go see the movie, come back, and we'll talk about it when you come back. Save this video so you can come back and see us. This movie makes sense at like the very last minute, literally the end credit. And it's because this group isn't the Thunderbolts, and they never were supposed to be the Thunderbolts. They're the New Avengers. Because the Thunderbolts are the Punisher Task Force, and they're doing what the Thunderbolts do in the comics, and it was never supposed to be that way, so it wasn't surprising, but the dynamic makes sense because the New Avengers were, in the comics, brought together because the Avengers had to disband. It was a group of heroes that had to step up because they just were around each other. And they weren't supposed to be a found family, they weren't supposed to know each other, weren't supposed to work well with each other unless it was a stressful situation. And that's what the New Avengers are, and eventually they'll get to a point where they can work well, but right now, that's what it was. But the New Avengers are only existing because they had to get the job done when the Avengers couldn't. They say it in the movie. And they hold down the fort until the next big event arrives and they just decide to get the Avengers back together because they need to. Like, that is what the new Avengers are for. And since the whole Fantastic Four coming into this universe and the next big threat is Doom, we understand that we're just holding it down until we get the next big threat. Okay, spoiler over. But did I think this was a bad movie? No, I did not. I think it just would have thrived better as a Disney Plus series. But it's a beautiful movie. The fact that they only did practical effects where they could, like, unless they absolutely couldn't, was awesome. And I think that is one of the things that gives people that nostalgic feel. I also think just assembling a team of Avengers after a while is something that gives people the we're so back feel. I get it, I do. It's grounded, it's not multiverse, it's not a space threat, it's not a time travel thing. It's down to earth, and it's something that we were lacking in the MCU. But because of Marvel Spotlight coming, I think that is something that we're gonna get used to again. But there's good, subtle storytelling, and I wish they had room for non-subtle, long storytelling. So, especially if we're going to go into Doomsday and we're gonna get the Avengers, the new Avengers, the West Coast Avengers, the young Avengers now turned champions, we have to spend some time with each of these teams to care about them. But I did overall enjoy the Marvel films. I always enjoy Marvel films. There's very few that I don't enjoy, period. So, like, it's not like I disliked it. There's just some things I wish could have done better, and that's kind of what I'm saying. But I hope you liked this. I know it was kind of long, but if you wanted to see more movie reviews like this, please let us know so we know that we can keep doing them for you guys. And let me know what you guys think about the Thunderbolts movie in the comments down below. Be sure to like and comment and subscribe and hit that bell notification icon to know when we post more videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. Stay geeky. Bye!